everybody. Welcome to This Week in Pre-IPO Stocks podcast. With me, I have Evan Cohen, founder and chief operating officer with Vincent.com. It's a media company focused on alternative investments. Clint Sorensen, chief investment officer at WellShield. It's an outsourced CIO and investment research company. And Nick Fusco, CEO of PM Insights. It's a pre-IPO secondary market pricing company. All right, fellas, we got three topics today. First one I want to hit on with you is Rippling. Right? It's an HR kind of IT finance ops SaaS platform. They're doing a primary round raise, okay? $16 billion valuation. That's up from $13.5 billion last year, which was their last round. That's an 18.5% increase. But Nick has it trading on PM Insights at $14.7 billion secondary market valuation. So that's up 8.8%. Since that, excuse me, the new round's up 8.8% from the current secondary market round price, right? So Goldman, GIC, Iliad Gills coming in. What are your thoughts, or any kind of thoughts on Rippling or just SaaS? And in particular, they do have a number of AI solutions. So maybe we can kind of throw that in the mix too, right? They're starting to pump through some AI solutions, which might be, and maybe some thoughts on how that impacts the valuation. But Nick, maybe we can start with you today, man. Like, what are your thoughts on kind of Rippling and the round that they're doing here?
Sure. So I think the round isn't anything egregious relative to the prior round or relative to the secondary. So that all seems pretty smooth. Also, I think they are getting a little bit of a benefit from kind of what's been in the news about Deal. The lawsuit alleges that the $12 billion unicorn at the time, Deal, was spying and stealing from Rippling. And this is direct from the Rippling website. So any new company or existing company that's up for renewal or choosing a new partner for HR, finance, things of that nature, I think they can only really put Deal to the back burner and say they're not going to use it, you know, and start taking on some of the other kind of AI forward or more nimble, more flexible solutions, and Rippling's front and center on that. So I'd say that's a great shout. But you know, the more I'm seeing on the technology front on how fast these things can be built, I will say that a year from now we're going to have another Rippling 2.0. You know, so we just have to be wary of that as the bear case, that winding up or spinning up these sorts of businesses are not going to be nearly as hard in the next 12 months as they were 12 months ago or in the last few years.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so Evan, let me ask you this, man. What do you think? These guys seem to me to be primed to offer like AI solutions to their customers, right? I mean, they're already doing HR, IT, finance, ops work. It seems to make sense that they could come in and maybe start taking down employees, right, out of those teams. Would you agree with that, or maybe have a different perspective on that thought? Like, what do you think about AI and getting delivered through Rippling?
You're absolutely right. I think a lot of the operational capacity that Rippling is supposed to take over or support can definitely be AI-ified. So that makes a lot of sense. They've got a very well-respected and highly capable CEO who has done this before and built companies, and he's definitely deep in the valley. So they have probably access to capital, access to engineers. You know, yeah, they're a pretty interesting company. They face a lot of competitors in they're like probably a centralized solution that has competitors in every one of the verticals they compete in that is probably more name brand than them. And so they're really trying to bite and take a big bite out of a lot of different things and compete and sort of focus on the centralized, you know, everything in one place thing, which is where AI gets a lot of value. You know, it remains to be seen. I actually think that the challenge for them is that they primarily target like most of these fintech HR SC services. Is they tend to focus on small, medium businesses and startups, which could be very challenged in the next 24 months with funding drying up, VC struggling, et cetera, et cetera. And they're not a cheap solution. They're not like the cheapest on the block.
We looked, and they are not cheap.
They're not cheap.
Mm.
And look, look, I think that they have the corporate spend product. They compete with Ramp and Brex. They have the payroll product. They compete with JustWorks and Gusto. They have, IT. They compete with a bunch of different small businesses that provide IT support like Jamf, et cetera. So they've got competitors everywhere. And like, really, they're the argument of do you want one-stop shop or not? And since they're not a cheap solution, you really need to be sold. And yeah, I think that AI could benefit their margins, but it's going to be. I wonder if that whole entire business stack is somewhat commoditized.
Oh, that's interesting. Because of AI, you're saying that it could get commoditized.
Like, do you really want to Ramp and Brex don't charge anything for their service? Like, why would you pay for Rippling's version just because it connects to your payroll? Like,
I understand.
There's a lot of I don't know. It's kind of a complex operational thing. At the end of the day, though, and as a founder myself, if you're a smart startup founder, you don't want to spend your time dealing with HR. You don't want to spend your time dealing with state filings, and you don't want to spend your time dealing with reimbursements, things like that. So having an automated solution is a very easy sell to a founder, and having it unified is a very easy sell. The question is when venture funding dries up and you're trying to be lean, are you going to lean on a more expensive solution that's unified, or bits and pieces of smaller ones that are less expensive?
Got it. All right. So Clint, what do you think? So this is from an asset allocation perspective, right? You decided to invest money into venture capital or late stage venture. You got a company like Rippling, right? That's doing around at 16 billion. It's up 18.5% year over year, right? Versus some of the other AI, companies, crypto's kind of back now, right? We're talking AI infrastructure plays are out there. How do you think about a Rippling? I mean, is this something that you want to be in, or is it an asset allocation thing when you're thinking about the space? Walk through your thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, not me personally for this name, and it's not a knock on the business or what they've done. It comes down to there's a couple good things going for it. Number one, who's been in the rounds that they've had, right? They've got the who's who of institutional venture funds invested or have invested in led rounds. My worry is two-pronged. Number one, fragile moat, which I think Evan did a great job highlighting. I'm not going to belabor that point. Second is exit liquidity, and we've talked about this on this podcast a lot. They're at 40 times sales, right? There's already talk of overvaluation in this name relative to competitors. Will the exit liquidity be there in an IPO? That's the question. Can they IPO? How are they going to continue to do these primary rounds? Their valuation really hasn't moved from round to round in the last several. And Nick has them trading right around their last primary round.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think fragile moat. I think exit liquidity is going to be a challenge in markets in general. And with a company with a fragile moat, I'd be really worried about exit liquidity. And I just think the valuation's rich at 40 times sales. So that's a no-go for me.
Okay. Good thoughts, gentlemen. All right, let's talk Figma. All right, so Figma just filed confidentially for an IPO, which is a very interesting thing to do with the world crashing down. But,
let's not laugh at them.
No, I'm not. That's a great company. I actually love their product. So they do, for those that don't know, they do UI UX, all right, design. And literally every developer that I know that does any kind of and designer that I know uses Figma. It's like the go-to. Fair? It's like the go-to.
They're the market
it's like
leader.
the go-to. It's great. And it's easy to use. It's a great product. Okay. So Adobe was going to buy these guys in 2023 for $20 billion valuation. Okay. And the EU killed the deal. The European Union, right? Regulators. So now they did a secondary sale in July of 2023 at $12.5 billion. Nick has them up 53% since November, okay, which was kind of right around that same $12.5 billion range. So now they're at closer to $21 billion, right? So annual revenue, ARR, was $900 million in 2023. That was the latest number I can find. So I'm not sure what they did last year in 2024. I'm assuming it's higher. So you're probably looking at something that's less than a 20 times revenue multiple, right? So this is this is a SaaS business, right? I don't think AI, I guess you could have AI generating screens for you, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
But Evan, you're got a man of violent head nods from you. So I'll start with you, man. What do you think? What do you think about Figma? What do you think about this IPO? Do you like the company?
So I like the company. Like, have liked the company. I find the product to be great, very innovative, great founder. It just excellent execution all around on the product. It gives me a lot of the Slack vibes. So, a company that had really great viral product-led growth, was beloved by users, by enterprises, was scaling, upscale, doing a great job. And then, they went public, and it kind of, the business reality came to hit. And I think that they're going public because they realize that their business mode is even potentially more fragile because AI is coming, and the need to have people paying for the software might not be as strong as it used to be.
That's fair.
And so, to me, I think they're reading the tea leaves. They're reading the tea leaves. They realize where the market's headed. Anyone can build a website. Think about this: the ChatGPT image generator that went viral, was it 5 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And now they're going public. They're probably trying to get ahead of the next big innovation that's going to go viral.
Okay.
And so, I think that this is. I can't believe that they'd be going at 20 billion. I thought the S1 was somewhere going to be around like 14 or 15.
I don't know. So I don't know the answer. I haven't seen if there's rumors out there that would make sense. I mean, if they did a $12.5 billion secondary stock sale, definitely 14 or 15 would make sense for an IPO, right? And with the hopes that it goes higher, right? And when you get out in the market, but Clint, what do you think? Do you think these guys have a thin moat, considering AI's on the horizon?
I mean, they got big market share in design, right? It's like, and they've got big international clientele. They got like 85% international clients. They got big clients here in the States. When you think about Microsoft, some of the big names, I think AI and Canva are a big challenge to the moat. If you think about it long term. But I think they're starting to roll out other tools to adapt to that. So I still think they have a stable business model, a lot of brand loyalty, to Evan's earlier point.
Yeah.
This is going to come down to valuation, and can they generate enough demand in a poor liquidity environment to make it a successful IPO? I think that's what it comes down to at this. This is probably one of the better names to go ahead and attempt it. Obviously I have to read the S1 and get into the nitty gritty and the details here, but man, and the addressable market, right? They're gonna have to pivot to other markets. The total addressable market in design is kind of small. They're gonna have to pivot into other markets, which I think they might do. I read somewhere, and I'm trying to find it. I read somewhere that they had some ideas to roll into other markets, or they had some new products they're rolling into other markets, but I can't find what that's called. Also administratively, right? Deregulation could benefit them on an IPO front. I forgot about that because regulation blocked the Adobe $20 billion purchase value. So sets in my opinion, sets a pretty good watermark for them from a valuation perspective at that 20 billion. They're trading at 20 to 25 times sales if you just assume that number. So yeah, it doesn't bother me as much. As other names. I can't wait to see what happens, just because the liquidity is just so terrible here. But but hey, if they've got a cult following, as Evan said and as Nick said. So I think this is the one I'm looking forward to watching.
All right, so Nick, safe to say AI is probably motivating these guys to make this move, or it's part of the motivation, right? I mean, do you think?
Fair.
Would you agree with these two gentlemen's kind of perspective? And, do you think they got to really kind of change up their product set or expand their product set and get into some new markets to be able to maintain this like 20 times revenue multiple?
I think at least whether they're going to do it or not, they have to promise it. Promise it to the IPO prospective investors. But I think the look and feel, I think Clint, you said it, is kind of right on this name. Like if you look at the market share, you look at the brand loyalty and the brand recognition on this, it's actually really good. It's a much more recognizable brand than, we were just talking about Rippling. So if Rippling and Figma IPO'd in the same day, a lot more people are going to resonate or connect with Figma than the HR software or the accounting, things like that, And then also it kind of, nobody, nobody dislikes the company. And then if the regulations had been lighter, then it would have been part of Adobe. And I think the more and more an investor thinks about the pros and the cons on this name, I think their discomfort would probably sit with, okay, how big is the moat, as we've all kind of brought up. But if they can stay with that, keep the brand, keep it kind of rolling, it's not an ultra high cost product either. So it's not like you can't ward off if Canva's coming for them in a different way, shape, or form, or if other companies are coming for them. So I think this one's pretty defensible. So the downside is probably a lot lower than like the company like a Rippling in my mind.
Right. Go ahead, Evan.
I just
I see you're itching. You're itching. Let it rip.
Well, I just remember it. Sorry. That, as I said, when Slack went IPO, everyone was thinking it was very, very similar vibes. And you know what happened? Microsoft Teams came and boom, Slack was like no longer necessary. Like basically took a massive part of their market share into that space. I think that the way that OpenAI and Microsoft are very tightly integrated in building AI tool sets, I could see a very, very similar path of a new design paradigm, or even something like a Cursor or a Replit. Like Replit, where you're just building if you're vibe coding, you can vibe design at the same time.
Sure.
It just feels disruptible. I don't think the moat's that strong. You're right. It's not a very expensive product. It's generally used by the design team and some of the product managers. But who were the first people probably to get cut in an engineering, like in an AI forward world? Or designers and
you're
product
probably
managers.
Not wrong about that.
So to me, it just feels like you're talking about a software adjacent to a market that may not even be relevant in 5-7 years. And also in a world where AI, who needs design when you're talking to a chatbot? Sorry.
But the reason why I think that this is very different than Slack is because you have a specified vertical in which it acts. Because if you look about Slack, it's a messaging tool. Guess who has a messaging tool? Okay, yeah, LinkedIn does. So there's WhatsApp. There are 5 different versions of WhatsApp out there. There's Teams. Then you have Zoom. Like Zoom is its own thing. That was challenging WebEx. And then you have Google Meet. And then you have this. Like, who uses Slack for Messenger or any sort of messenger, or who uses Video Meet? We're on one right now. That's everybody. But this is a very specific group of people, designers, and not everyone should be designers, because we all know what happens when the 4 of us take the helm with the mouse and try to design stuff. It doesn't come out right.
What's a mouse?
So that's why, or a trackball. That's why I think this one's a little bit safer, because you have that loyalty to a specific end of the software. If it's ubiquitous, that's why you have Truth Social and X and Facebook and like Instagram and
fellas,
TikTok.
This is where I'm like starting to consider some of these SaaS companies, Rippling included. These are becoming, in my opinion, AI apps, or need to become AI apps. And I think it's still, my take on this is it's still too early to see who's going to win. Like, is a Figma going to start offering code assistant solutions? So is it going to move from the designers into software developers, right? Or is it just going to stick to the design solutions? Are they going to be able to let a designer build a full website on their own using AI, which I could definitely see that happening. Obviously, it wouldn't probably be as good as if a human was involved, but it would probably work, right? Whereas before, it was just something you could click around on in Figma. Now it could actually be a live app on the App Store. So but I don't know. To Evan's point, is Replit going to start offering design solutions, or OpenAI start designing, or Cursor opening design solutions? So this is where I think it makes it's going to be interesting to see where some of these companies go. The thing that you guys all mentioned that is important to me is they have customers. They have a lot of customers, right? And some people that really love their brand. So for them to kind of take steps out into other places and kind of cross-sell or upsell might be, an easier thing to do than some of these newer firms. Although Cursor's got, 100 million users, right? I mean, they're gripping, you know what I mean, themselves.
If the barrier to entry for something like a Cursor and similar is low, if you handed me a Mac right now, I'm going to have some trouble with that. It still does all the same things as my PC, but I'm going to have trouble with that, right?
Fair.
Probably
fair.
Vice versa with Evan back to the PC. But I think that's that's in part very helpful for them as a business.
Yeah.
And when we try to make it so easy to like decrease the barrier to entry to do something that is rather specialized, certain people shouldn't do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there aren't many Bo Jacksons out there, or people you could flip from one sport to another, you know? And
Fair point.
I think
point.
that, yeah, we're just going to get some inferior output if we think that everybody can do every job.
So just a question I'll leave you with, Nick, then, is like, if you were to think about the average customer for Figma and the number of seats that the company buys versus the number of essential like users of the product that actually need it, how inflated do you think that number is?
I think it's probably a similar level of inflation to the people that have HBO Max and all the other streaming services. You know, a whole bunch of people like use it off and on, and then you try to take it away from them, and they're like, oh, I kind of need this again.
That's a fair point. There's definitely some price elasticity on that, because I fall into that exact example. It's like, it's only $10 a month. Just keep it around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when
in
times
a cost-cutting environment, which I think is where Evan's coming from, it totally makes sense. You're going to keep your tabs on it. But also those companies are very good. Even the automated, hey, we're going from 5 seats down to 3. Then they'll throw you a promotion or something and lock you in for a longer term deal. Like, I think we'll get over it, you know, in the long haul here. And if they can come out with new products to encourage, you know, we'll throw you new services, you know, the Danny Meyer approach. We're not going to be cheaper, but we'll give you 3 more bells and whistles that you didn't before. I think the downside is not carnage on this name is really where I'm going. It's a softer downside than a lot of the other companies that we look after.
Okay, fair enough. All right, fellas, let's hit a little lighthearted one here to end on. Third topic of the day. So there was a Beijing, China half marathon this past weekend, and 21 humanoid robots ran in the race. Okay, 2 finished the race. Okay, Tien Kung Ultra and the Little Rascal N2 finished the race. Okay, the Little Rascal was like, as the name describes, a little guy, right? The Tien Kung Ultra was more of a regular human-sized robot. But there's 2 ways to look at this. So 21 started, only 2 finished. Okay, but there's 2 ways to look at this. Some it's ridiculous, right? This is why we're even talking about this. The other way to look at this is I haven't never seen a robot run a half marathon in my lifetime, 44 years on the planet. So that's interesting. And I'm assuming it only gets better from here, right? So, so what are your thoughts on this? I'll call it publicity stunt, because I think that's kind of what it was, right? What are your thoughts on this publicity stunt? And do you think that this opens up investors' eyes to like the possibilities of where these things could go? You know, maybe Clint, we'll start with you, man. Like, what do you think? Humanoid robots, half marathon.
I mean, I've stated this before. I don't understand the obsession with the humanoid aspect of these robots. I'm always like, why don't you build them for specific use cases or versatility and call it a day, right? You know, running a marathon, put a bunch of humanoids and I put something on a vehicle or one of these flying drones and call it a day. I'm going to win the marathon. So I don't understand the PR stunt. At the end of the day, I think the technology is amazing, and from a demographic problem, especially China, they need to run this. They need to lead this race. Frankly, them in Japan need to lead the robot race in terms of how to create productivity without labor.
Right.
So they're redefining that and solving a really, really big need. If you look at just demographically from a macro perspective, there's not many countries in a good seat. From a demographics perspective, we have aging demographics. A lot of countries are below replacement in terms of number of children they're having and fertility rates. Fertility rates have fallen off a cliff for quite some time. So I like it from that aspect. I think it's something that not a lot of people saw happening, and with the AI quote unquote revolution, jumping onto the main screen, I think it's shifted my focus on, everyone kind of thought China from a macro perspective was dead. They're losing 100 million people, or at least they lost 100 million people, I guess, 2 years ago, were the quote unquote official statistics. But that's a problem. right? Demographics are destiny from an economic growth perspective. You think about GDP growth, it's very simple. It's demographics plus productivity plus debt growth. You have those three things. And if you have a shrinking labor force and demographics falling, you need a productivity revolution in order, plus debt growth and the ability to print money in order to have growth. And so I think this is a big thing. Robotics and technology in general. I don't know about humanoid robots, but that's my piece.
All right, cool. So Evan, I'll come to you last because I know you have strong opinions about humanoid robots, right? But Nick, what do you think? What do you think of? I mean, you and I kind of follow a couple. I know Figure AI, right, is out there doing around right now, and what do you think of humanoid robots? I mean, if you want to talk about Beijing Olympics, right, or just piggyback off of the comments that Clint just made.
Sure. So definitely say you want to have them do more than run marathons. Would love to think this is more than a publicity stunt, and maybe we do a decathlon next year, and see how many different things you can do.
That's good. I like that.
I like that.
I like that. That's funny.
But the end goal, and I think Japan was originally the leader on a lot of this stuff, and almost as Clint alluded to, you want to think about what is going to be required of them to help the general public, which in turn then helps the GDP of the country. Things like care. How do we care for an aging society? I think is a massive thing here. How do we just make our lives better? So the fact that you're going to have these more versatile humanoids or whatever structure they are, I think is a huge benefit. You want to have any new class of engineering coming out to help increase productivity or to make people's lives better so that they could be more productive, or the hours they put into the day are more productive. So naturally we don't need a whole bunch of new robots that can run marathons. It's pretty cool. We have BattleBots. We've had that for like 20 years.
BattleBots are awesome to watch. BattleBots are awesome.
But I think it's really proving, if we can have robots navigate a race like this, and be around that many people in a congested area, we can do a lot more. So I would just say it's a feat of engineering that I would applaud.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And then Evan, get into that statement that Clint made around humanoid robots versus kind of robots that are built for a specific purpose, because I know you've mentioned that in the past too. Like, reiterate those thoughts if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, at the onset, when I saw this on Twitter yesterday, I was like, this is pretty amazing. I was like, it's cool that they built this. It's another example of me feeling ashamed of my terrible athleticism, and that robots are just going to replace me entirely. But again, to Nick's point, to Clint's point, and basically what I was sort of reiterating is that, like, it doesn't seem like a great use of engineering resources to build a 2-legged robot to run a half marathon when you could be building a 4-legged robot to, move cargo ships from one side, like cargo from one side to the other of a ship, or boxes in a warehouse. Or, at the end of the day, like, if you're going to build a robot designed to go across distances, it should have wheels.
Right.
So the concept of a humanoid, there's benefits if you're trying to make it multi-purpose. Like, you want it to be able to do a number of different things in one solution, but a lot of automation is about finding very specific, what's the term that Henry Ford created? Like a I'm talking about.
Henry Ford?
Yeah, like the process of manufacturing step by step, which I'm totally drawing the name of the book.
Assembly line.
The assembly line. It's all about being very hyper specialized in one specific thing, and then having a flow in which you can do a lot of things really quickly. And so if you're going to build robotics and you're going to invest in robotics, I would think you'd want something very specialized to do something great very well versus having multi-purpose robots. So that's just like my argument. I don't know if it's a great use of energy to have it run a half marathon. I don't know what we accomplished, but I do think it looks cool. It's a publicity stunt.
Yeah, it's definitely a publicity stunt. I mean, like, look, so like I'm a big fan of Figure AI and some of the other humanoid robotics companies. I think, like, what the people that I talk to about humanoid robots versus kind of like robots that are built for a specific purpose is, I think, and you've heard like Brett Adcock say this, who's the CEO of Figure, like, the idea is that, the world is built for humans. So if you have a humanoid robot, then in theory, the robot could do anything a human could do. So, and you wouldn't need to train it or change the environment around so that the robot could operate. So if that in fact does play out, and if that in fact does come true, then I could see the applications to be pretty far reaching, right? But that's the argument.
But the inverse of that is like these robots can talk to each other through technology, through the internet, right? So it would be very silly to build a robot to use your laptop to type out an email on the QWERTY keyboard.
No,
right?
that I agree.
That's what I'm saying. So like the robot,
I think
has
it's more like
telepath.
what Nick said. Like you could have the robot take care of an elderly parent, and then go out and mow the grass, and then come in and cook dinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like.
And getting in and out of the bathtub, that's one, right? That's the most simple example you'll ever get of where a robot on wheels isn't going to fly as easily as something like this.
Yeah,
a robot with 4 legs might do much better.
Well, no, but so you're right. So Evan, you're right.
That's like, creepy. It starts to look like a spider walking around your house, helping grandma out. You don't need that.
But now you're getting emotional about it, and I think that's the mistake. Which is like, if you're going to get emotional, like at the end of the day, we should optimize for optimal performance. Like. It's like saying I'd rather have a car with 5 wheels because it looks weird, but like maybe it works a lot better for certain things. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, people have made odder decisions for worse things. I understand where you're coming from. I think like the investment thesis on these humanoid robots is that they'll in fact be able to do everything that a human does. So if you believe that they can do that, they'll ultimately be able to accomplish that, then that's I think why you would invest in a humanoid robotics company. But I got to tell you, like, from what I understand, it sounds like the hardware is actually there already to do most things. It's the AI right inside of the thing that hasn't had enough real world data yet to be able to operate properly and do all the things that we're talking about here.
And well, I wonder, kind of from Evan's comment about now you're being emotional about it. That's probably a good thing. If you really think about, how some of these are designed, we have a miniature robot dog. My son got it for his birthday, and it's actually really cute because it's built to look like a dog, and it walks around, and then it looks at you, and then it farts or does something stupid, and it's kind of like, that's adorable because it looks like a dog. But if it was on 4 wheels and it did the same thing, I don't know that we'd find it anything special. So, it is harder with something that is humanoid, but maybe it's, man's best friend styled, and it's just something that your mind or your emotion can resonate a little bit better with than maybe what was more like Dorothy and the Jetsons.
These
so
product decisions.
Curious on that.
These product decisions are going to be super interesting if this, in fact, stuff starts to play out. Because I could see a portion of the population is doing what Evan's saying. Like, look, I want a robot that's going to do all of this stuff the best way possible, right? And then I can see other people in society being like, no, I want that thing to look as human as possible, right?
With this particular voice, when
Sam
Altman was trying to get Scarlett Johansson's voice into OpenAI, right? There's a reason for that. Yeah.
So I could see, and maybe even, and there's probably some version of the future where we have like multiple of these things, in our homes, right? We have one that's more for like companionship. I know that might sound super odd to say, right? But and then there's other ones that are more for like chores. So the chores, you don't really care what it looks like. You just want it to do the job. Where the companionship, maybe you want to have more human elements to it, right? As well. So, but I mean, look, there's also to Evan's point though, there's also things like, I've been looking at some hologram type companies, right? So if you're looking for things that are more human, why do you actually need a physical thing? You could have a hologram type scenario. There's no hardware involved in that, right? Well, I guess there's the lenses, right, to project the hologram, but so it'd be interesting to see where this stuff kind of plays out. I'm cautiously optimistic on the humanoid robotics thing, and honestly, it's kind of what Clint said, and I know he had to run, but like to me, it's more of a function of supply and demand, right? So if in fact people are not having children as much, and you have countries like China who need like workers, and they're not able to adapt or build out the automation fast enough. And that could be or like you need people in this factory today and you need them in that factory tomorrow, and they're all doing different things. Perhaps a humanoid robot could be more apt to do that type of work, right? But I think economics is going to drive adoption of this stuff or drive it forward, right? In my opinion, I think it's going to be less about, like, I'd love to have one of these in my house. Like, there's going to be a real economic reason why people want these robots around.
The utility matters is what you're saying. And to me,
for sure,
you get more utility with 4 arms than 2, 4 legs than 2.
Fair.
You can carry more groceries. You can do more things.
Fair
point.
You
can hold the hands of 4 kids walking across the street. There's a lot of value in having the human is great, but if you could improve it, you should. You shouldn't just rest in your laurels.
And it's a fair point.
And going that direction, I could see the world where you actually have to have a little bit of both. You have the one that you're emotionally connected with because it's your day-to-day internal in home, but then you can have let's go straight to the guttural. You have the plumber version, and anytime there's a plumber issue, everybody in your neighborhood or your borough can rely on the same sort of model to come and fix the plumbing issue. Then there's the electric issue. Then there's this.
Right.
So it's kind of like your handyman, and they're purpose built for those.
Humans are like that
things.
too, not for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's that we've specialized into certain areas too. So it would make sense. Look, I think we could all probably agree on this though, that there's going to be more robots, not less in the future. Right. And then it's kind of a question of what type of robots those will be. Right. So it's like almost we're like having a discussion around degrees of the type of robot we'll have.
But all answers are just yes, more.
All answers are more robots. Right. So it will be interesting though, like on some of these, humanoid robotics companies, will they be so married to the idea of a humanoid robot, right, that they won't, move into other areas if that's where the market, kind of takes them. So that will be interesting to kind of keep an eye on over time too. But okay, fellas, let's end it there. This was a good one today.
Yeah,
appreciate your time. Okay,
all
right, cheers.